Welcome to the Viz Art Podcast, the business of art. This is podcast number 2 with Gil McCue. Gil, welcome. Gil, you are a World War II vet. You're going to be 91 years old in December. Professional artist, author, teacher, model, a member of the National Cartoon Society. Is there anything that you don't do?
I don't do windows.
You don't do windows. I'm sure you have washed a window in your day. I mean, I know you've been around the block. You've been there, done that. And, I definitely have to say, thank you for your service. I know a lot of our people who listen are vets and are in the military. And as I've told you 100 times, thank you. We definitely appreciate it. But this is an honor to have you here, Gil. I know this is your first podcast, obviously 90 years old. We're bringing you into the new technology, and we want to share some of your stories and talk to you a little bit about this business. When did you start drawing?
Well, I remember first sale I made. I was about 10 years old. And I made my first sale to my brother. He bought an illustration I did of a pair of his slippers. And I wanted 25 cents for it, but he said he only had 20 cents, so I said, I'll take it. And I took this 20 cents, and my father observed that incident, and he said, I know that's your first sale, Gil, and you're really a great artist, but don't think you can make a living at that, because that's a dead end.
And what did your dad know at the time, right?
Yeah, what did he know?
What did he know?
Of course, he took those words back later, but I'll tell you about that in a later day.
25 cents. I mean, that's still a good amount of money back then when you're 10. I mean, that's.
I'll tell you, boy. If you had $1, you were rich.
Yeah, that's you went through the Great Depression.
That's right.
I mean,
that was in the 1930s.
And so you got to see that. So that's awesome. Was that experience what made you want to continue art and want to continue to draw and create?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, when I graduated from grade school, I was awarded honors in art and the excellence in art, and then I continued on into high school, and I was an illustrator in the senior yearbook, and went to college, and I was in the college newspapers, as well as the yearbook there too. So
wow.
I continued art, and right into when I joined the Navy.
So you were an artist in the Navy too. It followed you everywhere.
That's correct. I worked on a Navy newspaper, and I was an artist. I did what they call spot cartoons, fill-ins. I did little cartoons, and I met a very, very talented artist by the name of Don Orheck, who I met, and we became friends right up to now, and that's for many, many years. He drew for Playboy.
Okay.
A very talented artist. Hugh Hefner used to say if this Playboy wouldn't have even been a newspaper unless without Don Orheck in it. With his gigs, they were so good.
Oh yeah, he has a funny. You showed me some of those, and I mean, they're dirty, they're funny, and I mean, they're just it fits right in with Playboy.
Well, they're not that dirty. They can.
I guess you showed me some of the ones that didn't make the
right.
the Playboy.
So it would never make the paper. Right.
Yes, you've known a lot of artists growing up. I mean, being part of the National Cartoon Society. I mean, you knew the guy who created Garfield and the guy who started Comic-Con here in San Diego. I mean, you've met a lot of
that's true
great artists, and still, the
true.
ones that are living. It seems like you're still friends with them.
That's very true. We had an occasion to have National Cartoonist Society have their meeting in San Francisco, and we took a trip up to Santa Rosa, and we went to the museum, Charlie Schultz's museum, Peanuts.
Yeah.
And that was an experience there. I was offered a job to become a cartoonist with the museum. Of course, a lot of students go there. They want to know how to draw Peanuts, and I had a pretty down pat. Oh, by the way, speaking about Peanuts, Charlie Schultz never named Peanuts. It was named by the syndicate. He wanted to call it Little People, And the syndicate said, "Oh, there's too many littles. There's Little Orphan Annie, and there's Little Tom Thumb or something
Little
like
somebody."
that." Yeah, and they said those kids just look like a bunch of peanuts. So that's how it got the name. And Charlie Schultz really never liked the name Peanuts. He always wanted to be Little People.
Wow. I know you have so many stories over the years. I've known you now for almost 8 years. Before the shop, I first saw you out there selling. I'm like, who is this 80-year-old man out here setting up, breaking down? And, years later, here we are, good friends, talking. And you really have done it all. I know we're not going to be able to get into all the stories, but you have them. You have them everywhere you looked. I mean, you've even written a book about it. I mean, we were just talking about that. You reread it last night because it's such a good book. Right. Tell me about this book. What is this book that you wrote?
Well, it starts off. It talks about life as a street artist, going from town to town, from one show to another. And when I first started doing art shows, I used to do oil paintings, but I found in time that carrying oil paintings wasn't a good idea because they're wet and they're heavy and they got to be packed. And I'm really an illustrator, actually. Pen and ink is really my gig. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing oil paintings, and I was forced into learning how to do watercolor. I never really thought I was a very good watercolorist, but in practice and time, you find the tricks that make a good watercolor. So I found that I combine my illustrations with watercolor, and they're very effective. Huh. People love them.
Now, you brought up a good point. You brought up a point that when you travel, you're traveling with a bunch of originals. Like this day and age now, for me, 95% of my business is prints. So you traveling around with originals, I mean, that's mainly what you were selling. You weren't selling limited editions. You weren't selling open-ended prints. I mean, you literally were painting and selling them as fast as you could create them, right?
That's correct.
So the shows were... where have you set up, your art? Because you were born on the East Coast, and then I'm guessing the Navy brought you out here to San Diego for the art shows. After that, you jumped right in, right?
The shows that I did well with, and were the very first shows, and I was doing oil paintings then, pretty much. And that was in New York City at Greenwich Village.
Okay.
They had an annual show there, and as a matter of fact, it was a juried show. There were artists came from all over the country to do that show. And I became good friends with a number of people through that my medium. And even at that time, I even tried a little sculpture. And I met celebrities. I met Peter Falk, who everybody knows Peter Falk. He was Columbo. A regular program. As a matter of fact, I watch him now on Saturdays. They have it on MeTV. They have reruns of Columbo. And
man, even as a 35-year-old, that might be a little out of my...
I enjoy watching him. He's a real character. But as it turned out, Peter Falk was a very talented artist, and I didn't realize it. And I saw him one day staring at my artwork. And I had a pen and ink art up there, and I recognized him right away. So I stood up very quickly, and I walked over, and I introduced myself, and I said, "Are you interested in anything?" He said, "Oh, I really am interested." He said, "You're really talented." So I said, "Well, thank you, Peter." And he said, I do a little bit of this myself. And he was going to art school there in New York City.
Wow.
And I told him I was a school teacher, and he said, "Would you critique my work?" I said, "I'd be happy to." So he runs right back to the art studio, he grabs some of his work, and he brings it back. And he's shown it to me, and it turned out a lot of other people recognized him then, too. And they were shouting, hey, Columbo, hey, over here, Columbo, let me see, what are you looking at there? And the crowd really became rude. So he said, "We really can't do it. Now, why don't you come to the studio, and we'll talk there." So that's the way that ended.
Wow.
But as it turned out, I never did get to see his work since, but I see it now you can see it on a computer. His artwork, very good.
And that's right when he was still filming his shows, huh? Was that it? That was like in the peak of his
that was
his
the peak
career.
of his career, correct.
So that was in New York City. What brought you out to San Diego? What brought you out here?
I had a friend who actually it was my wife's friend. She married a military person, and they lived in Coronado. And my wife went out to visit them. She was invited. And she loved it so much, she said, Gil, we have to move. And I packed up and moved.
That's incredible.
And I realized that there was, you didn't have to worry about the weather conditions.
Yeah.
And that's the problem back east. You've got snow and you got rain, and and you do a show and you have to pay up front, and it rains all weekend, and you end up making nothing. And you had to pay in advance, for motels and hotels, and I mean it got a little. But out here, forget about the rain.
We don't get many rained out shows around here. We pay for the weather, but you can do shows year round, which is amazing.
So when I saw how great the weather was, I said, "This is the place."
Nice.
I stayed.
And so you were already married at the time. You had your twin boys.
I had twin boys then.
So this is interesting. You brought up Hotel del Coronado, and your wife was actually a model and famous in her own rights during the time. She was one of the top models, correct?
Correct.
And you guys were actually on the set of Some Like It Hot. Can you tell me about this photo right here?
Oh, Marilyn Monroe.
Did you really take that photo, Gil?
That photo, yes. That's just a long story. I was a model at that time, and I was with a modeling agency in San Diego, and they were doing the film of Some Like It Hot down at the Hotel Del, and they needed some extras, so they asked me if I'd be interested. I said I'd be happy to go there. So I took my camera and I went down, and I figured I want to get a picture of Marilyn Monroe because I was just an extra, and I couldn't get near her. She had so many people around her all the time. And then they were going out to the front of the hotel to do a shot out there. And I happened to be standing by the doorway when she's passing by, and she had a pair of glasses which she accidentally dropped. Just at that moment, I happened to be standing with my camera, and she bent down to pick up the glasses, and I said, "I'll get them for you, Marilyn." And she looked up at me and she said, "Oh, no, thank you." And I went, "I got your picture."
So you tricked Marilyn, but you got to see her. Was she as beautiful in person as?
Yeah, I wanted to ask her for a date, but I think my wife wouldn't have appreciated.
No, I don't think your wife would have appreciated that, Gil. But those were different times. But this is a great photo. We have this photo. It's one of our top selling coasters that you used to sell, and I love that story. So thank you for sharing that one. I want to go into this because this is one of my favorite pieces too. So this, I know this is story time with Gil, but I love your stories. I can hear them all over. A lot of them are in the book that you wrote, but a lot of these are not in the book. And this is, who's this little boy in this picture?
That I didn't know it, but that was me. But I didn't know it was me for a long time until my father passed away, and I was going through some of his photos, and I came across this one. And I said to my mother, "Who is that?" She said, "That's you, stupid." She said, "Your father took your picture." She said, "Dumb and Dumber."
That's the
you and your father.
That's hilarious. How did she tell you about how you were able to get right next to the elephant?
My father said, "Hey, listen, they used to, at the circus came to town, and they had the elephants outside the tent, and they had them sitting on those iron stools. And this one was sitting there by himself, and there was an empty chair next to him. So my father said, 'Go over and put your arm around that elephant.' And dummy me went down and put my arm around. He took my picture.
It's an incredible photo. I know the ones who are listening to this on the podcast can't see it, but it is literally a full-size elephant sitting on a stool with little Gil, who's maybe 6 or 7 years old, and he's got his arm around him, and that's where a lot of the famous pictures of that little boy and girl with the elephants came from, because this was published in the New York Times as well. And then I asked Gil, because I love this picture so much, if I can recreate it in my style. So I created an actual greeting card called Birthday Buddies. Should have been called Birthday Dummies, but Birthday Buddies was what our collaboration was. Gil even signed it on the inside. It's a little boy putting his arm around the elephant with the elephant in the hat. So Gil, I appreciate you letting me recreate this. Kind of cool that we were kind of able to do this collaboration. But yeah, like I said, that story, love it. Love being able to do a piece with you, kind of with the little boy and his elephant. Was there a moment in your career where you thought you were going to fail as an artist?
Actually, the first opportunity that I had was I had done an oil painting of John F. Kennedy, and I had done another on one of Lincoln. And then I found out that there was an art studio in a mall that was looking to dress up their window for Lincoln's birthday. So I went to see the director there at the gallery, and I said, I have two paintings. I showed him one of Lincoln and one of JFK. And he said, well, he took a look at them. He said, these would be great. He had two windows in the front at the mall, and he draped them, set up the paintings, and he draped them with a blue velvet background and a very soft light on both of them. And that was on a Friday night. And Saturday, he called me early in the morning. He said, there's a crowd of people out there and all looking at those paintings. I said, yeah. I said, I know it's Lincoln's birthday. And people, no, he says, they're looking at the JFK. It turned out that JFK had passed away only a couple months back. And I was motivated to do a painting of him at that time. And so he said, come on down and take a look. And I went down and took a look. And sure enough, there was a big crowd of people. And the JFK had already been sold.
Wow.
So I told the fellow, listen, I said, I know you're the first one to buy it, but I said, I can't give it to you right away because it's got to stay in the window, for at least a week or two, and before the owner decides to take them down. So he put a deposit on it, and after that I did something which I never did before, but I wanted to get a copy of it, so I took the painting and I made another copy. So I had two copies, one that the fellow bought and the other one I had. And later on I used that second copy, which I really liked. It was a little different than the first one. The second copy was a profile painting, which is on the back of one of these books. And that was the second painting. And I did that because I found that they were looking for a memorial stamp for John F. Kennedy. Jacqueline Kennedy was going to pick one out, but you had to be sponsored by a congressman or by a senator in order to submit it. So I had a friend of mine, I knew well, was a senator in New York. And I told him about the painting, and I said, would you sponsor me? And he said, I'd be happy to. So he took the painting and he brought it to Washington, and it was on display down there. Jacqueline Kennedy walked around and she picked out a painting that had a pipe sticking out of the ground and a flame coming out, and it was called the Eternal Flame, and that was used for the stamp, not my painting.
Not your painting.
But the senator told me, he said, listen, I know your painting wasn't picked, but a lot of people are interested in buying it, so if you want to just leave it there. He said it might sell. So I put a price on it. I forgot what the price I put on it was. I think it was $17.50. I had it down for the price. And it turned out it was there for a month. And in the meantime, the senator was in an accident, and he was supposed to pick it up and bring it back, and the painting was never wasn't picked up, and I got in touch with his wife, and his wife said that she'd have a congressman look into it, and the congressman told her that the ones that weren't picked up were put in storage. And I never found the painting again.
So it was a lost painting that you loved.
It went into storage, and no one knew where it was put. And I never got the painting back until
we found, actually, we had a guy who contacted us knowing that we carried Gil's artwork here in the shop. He contacted us asking, do we know about this JFK painting? And I said, Gil, I found the guy who has your original JFK. And I got Gil and him in touch with each other, and the guy still has it. He never gave it back to you, but at least we know what happened to it. And it was crazy how this whole circled around. But basically, because you were on our website, this Gil looked him up, asking if you were still around, and if you could tell him about it. So that was cool. This is the painting right here of JFK that you did years ago. That was almost on the stamp.
He wanted to sell a painting back to me, my own painting.
That you never got any money for.
I know, I was never paid for.
Wow.
But we, with today's technology, we were able to take that painting from the image that he had sent us, and I blew it up into a very large size, and it looks perfect. And
Nice.
my son has that painting.
Bigger on his
Much.
So I mean, you're doing a lot of things, even with technology. I mean, they sell your books. You've written how many books now? I mean, throughout the years.
Well, I think with these two, I got 8 books out.
8 books. They have some of them that you could buy through iTunes.
No, they have Traffic Publishing.
Okay.
Traffic Publishing as a publisher, which I used earlier, and he published a number of my books.
But they were available digital. I mean, that's what I'm saying is you have them. You have your books digital. I mean, you're doing podcasts. Right. I mean, you're keeping up with the times as much as a 90-year-old can, right? I mean, this is
my granddaughter lives with me, and she said, "Grandpa," she said, "you're really pretty knowledgeable and pretty savvy, with technology as well as your artwork."
Yeah, you are.
You got to stay on top of it. Things.
You got to stay. I mean, you are. You're still hustling. You're in the art industry. What keeps you going? What keeps Gil ticking? I mean, you outwork half of the artists that I know out there. What is it that makes Gil keep going?
What makes me tick?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to sit home looking at the 4 walls. My wife passed away, and that's another story. When she passed away, she's buried in San Luis Rey Mission, a cemetery right behind the mission. And when she was buried there, the director asked me what kind of what I wanted on a gravestone, because they do the engravings. So I looked at a book that he showed me, and I didn't care for any of the drawings. So I said, could I design my own gravestone? So the woman said, that's never been done before. So I said, well, I'm an illustrator. So she said, well, why don't you make a sketch and I'll show it to the engravers, and they'll make a decision about that. And sure enough, within a week, she called me back. She said, okay, you can do it. So I'm probably the only one at San Luis Rey Mission Cemetery that has designed his own gravestone.
Wow. Well, that's pretty special to be able to do that for your wife, and I'm guessing that's where you're gonna end up. You guys are both gonna be at the mission there.
Yeah, I don't have my first name is on it, but not my last. So I visited. Matter of fact, I visited yesterday. I put a rose there next to her.
That's incredible. So what is it that keeps Gil ticking? What is it that makes you keep getting up and coming? Because you set up on the weekends. You're still here every Saturday, every Sunday. You're wheeling your stuff in. You're setting your booth up. And I try to tell artists and young people all the time, like, this is what it takes. You got to set up. You got to break down. I mean, and they say it's too much work, but here's a 90-year-old person doing it and running laps around them, that they don't want to do it, but it's just engraved in you. And I think if we could clone that and teach some of these other people what you got to do to get in this industry if you want to sell your work.
Well, you have to hustle. It's just like any other job. I like talking to people. I'm a good salesman. And not that actually the artwork sells itself. These books sell themselves. I don't really have to say much about them. As soon as they look at them, they say, wow, you did all of these?
Yeah, these 2 new coloring books that you brought out here.
This is the latest, California. I have the San Diego coloring book, and that's the first one edition, and that has only San Diego scenes. And the other one has Northern California and points north.
So yeah, these are artworks that you've done throughout your time. I mean, we have everything from local scenes to up and down the coast. I mean, there's Mission. You probably did some of these 40, 50 years ago, huh?
Well, not that long ago.
Not that long ago?
This one here, I did the new ones up front.
Oh, the San Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah. I have Napa Valley, and that's a new one I just finished, and Huntington Beach.
So the trick is you got to love what you do, and you enjoy it. I mean, you love talking to people and getting out there. And
well, you gotta hustle. As a matter of fact, you can't go out and just sit there. You have to talk to people. If you don't get up and talk, it's not going to sell itself.
Yeah.
But with the combination of people like to talk to the artist.
Completely.
They love to buy pronouns. They ask me to sign those, even though my name's on the front cover. They asked me if I'll sign them on the inside, and I said absolutely, happy to do that. Put their name down.
And that's the point. I mean, that you bring up a great point. Is artists. A lot of artists put their artwork up and they expect it to sell itself. It doesn't matter how great it is, but you need to engage with the people. You need to talk to them. You need to shake their hand. You need to tell them about each of the pieces so that they have a connection. People want to buy from people they like. And obviously you are a very easy to like guy. But I think it is really important that you, like you said, you got to talk to them. You can't sit in the back of the booth and expect it just to sell on its own. It doesn't work like that. I mean, it doesn't matter how great the art is. You still have to engage and just introduce yourself as the artist. I mean, it's something as simple as that, to start a conversation, some dialogue, and bam, you sold some art. And these are your 2 newest coloring books. They're great. I mean, this is something that, you started printing. I mean, you've done Only in America. You've done coloring books. I mean, you have hit so many different, mediums and styles.
I've tried with different age groups as well. I have books for kids, and these are the coloring books for adults. And I have some things in between. But the idea is never, your mind... Keep your mind active. If you're active mentally and physically, you'll live to 100.
Yeah, and that's what you're going for,
and
right?
That's what I'm not really going for it because, there comes the aches and pains in between.
Sure. And you just had 2 hip replacements, and you still came back.
No, I have one hip
replacement.
one
hip replacement.
I have a knee replacement.
Okay.
And now they're talking about putting in a pacemaker.
Wow. And you're still going. You got to love that. What does the term starving artist mean to you? When you hear that term, what does that mean?
That's rather strange. I don't know how they came up with that name, but it was probably introduced during the Great Depression, when artists were sitting around trying to sell something and no one had any money to buy it. And they were starving.
Well, there was a saying, you always say a saying about how hard the art industry is because you're not in it for the money. I mean, you're in it because you love it. And what's the saying that you always say? Who do you have to marry?
Oh, you better marry rich.
You got to marry rich if you want to be an artist. Gil always loves to say that. But, I mean, I didn't know if that came from the starving artist side of it. And, why?
Marry rich.
You got to marry rich so that you can be an artist.
That's correct.
So I love that. I mean, is there any advice or wisdom to give someone, in this industry? Is there?
Well, if you have talent, don't let your talent dry up. Just use it, just like any other entertainer. We're basically in the entertainment industry. We're out there entertaining people, and people love it. It's just like an actor or a singer or someone who's a great dancer or someone who is active in their particular field of entertainment, and we're in that field. And if you have a talent, don't waste it. People love it.
You can tap into it, see where it can go.
People love you, and not only that, you carry your talent with you. I lived in New York, and they love it in New York. I sold in Virginia Beach. I brought stuff to Virginia Beach. Sold out. And I come out to California, and people, they love art, and you display, and you have the talent. They recognize it, and if your talent is recognized, you'll make money.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not worried about having extra change in my pocket.
It's because you're good at what you do, Gil.
I rarely have to go to the bank to get money. I mean, I make it every weekend.
That's a good
couple $100 every weekend. Can't beat that at my age.
Look at this guy. That's awesome, Gil. Is there anything else that you want to leave with or say, Gil?
Well, I want to say that you and I have become the best of buddies.
We definitely have.
And I love you like you're one of my sons. I have twin boys.
Thank you, Gil.
And my twin boys call me every day just to see how I'm doing. And I certainly appreciate that. And I appreciate you, Greg. You've become one of my best friends here in California. And I can't think of a better person to become
Thank you,
a
Gil.
buddy to.
That means a lot. And honestly, you are a big part of our shop. I mean, Gil was, when they had the weekly farmers market out front, Gil sold at the weekly farmers market, and then he started selling out front. And I mean, you have been a huge part of it. People come here asking about Gil, seeing how you're doing, and we love having you, man. And I can't say enough about you. Great artist, and like you said, best of buds. Dumb and Dumber.
I'll shake your hand on that.
All right, Gil. Well, that is the business. Thank you for coming and joining. Gil, you're the man. Watch this on YouTube, podcast. We have some more great things coming, and thank you so much, Gil. It's been a pleasure.
Good. Well, I think the pleasure is more on my end as well as yours.
Awesome. We'll see you next time.